大怪盗アルセーヌ・ルパンが残した不思議な宝物ルパンコレクションがギャングラーに奪われた。失ったものを取り戻すために戦う怪盗、世界の平和を守るために戦う警察、君はどっちを応援する？
Hello and welcome to LupinRecap vs. PatReview, the podcast that's stirring up a storm. I'm your host, Lokomasi. With me is my lovely co-host, Fefner Masamune.
When I was 14 on New Year's Eve, I took a bite out of 2 separate wine glasses in the same night. I intend to do it again.
I don't know what you're referencing, but okay.
I'll have to point out which one that is in the fifth section later, but it kills me every time.
Okay, that sounded like a drill tweet, so I was just going to assume that.
No.
Going forward. Oh, good. And that's right, we are a Lupin Ranger versus Pot Ranger recap and review podcast, and today we are talking about episode 47. But before that, let's have a little chat about endgames. So in between me telling you that I wanted to talk about this, and right now I remembered that you are in fact an English major.
Uh-huh.
And you probably have a better idea of how to talk about this than I do.
I mean, a little bit, yeah.
Yeah. I mainly wanted to bring it up because the endgame of this show could have gone very, very poorly due to the way that it's set up.
Mm-hmm.
There isn't much of an overarching plot. It's mostly character interactions. And people smarter than me have talked about, like, the second act slowly vanishing from movies. I remember Lindsay Ellis's tweet about Venom saying, like, we just watched a movie for 2 hours, and the hero says, alright, time to save the world.
Mm-hmm.
And that very easily could have happened with this show.
Yeah.
But I think they've made a pretty good transition into the endgame for a show that very reasonably could have gotten away with not having an endgame.
Mm-hmm.
It could have just been episode 51, alright, time to kill Degranio.
Gotta go kick his ass.
But they explained why Daestra moved and fought and died the way that he did. And they're starting to explain why the other members are starting to make the other high-ranking ganglers are starting to make their moves.
Yep. Stuff's been happening, even if it seems like it started from little things.
That's the other thing about endgames, is that I feel like there's always the point where everyone can agree, by this point you're in the endgame.
Mm-hmm.
By this point we're in the endgame. Where did the endgame start? Did it start with Daestra fighting? Did it start with Satoru's reappearance? Probably didn't start during the filler episodes, but hey, that was when it was revealed that the Pot Rangers were figuring out who the Lupin Rangers were. You actually have a decent argument that the Christmas episode is where the endgame starts.
Yep. So, at the very least, though, I will say, it can be debated, but I feel like it's in a good way. I would say that Destra is probably the point where the ball gets rolling, just because that's one of the major villains dying, and it's also a huge emotional point for both the Lupin Rangers and Pat Rangers, and where they sort of learn to get along ever so slightly. Well, maybe not get along, but they understand each other, and that understanding is what gives them power, except now we're turning that on its head.
Just in time for everything to go horribly wrong.
Yeah, so, at the very least, there is lead up to it, even if you could, reasonably point to different spots in the plot and say, yeah, that's where it starts. I've run into the problem before of, not really realizing when the endgame started. Way back in the day when I was playing Marvel Ultimate Alliance 2, I remember just, being on the elevator before the final boss, and then everybody back at HQ is on the intercom going, oh no, bad stuff's happening now, and I was like, oh, this is the final level, huh?
God, Marvel Ultimate Alliance 2 is such a mess.
Oh god.
The two Marvel Ultimate Alliance games, and I can't remember the name, but whatever X-Men game that came out that was the same game, but just X-Men.
Yeah.
They're all, super fascinating to me.
Mm-hmm.
They're so janky and messed up, but they tried to do so much with what they had.
Yeah.
Did Ultimate Alliance 3 actually come out?
It was super recent, actually. It just came out, and apparently it's more of a mess than usual.
Come on!
Or at the very least, it's, more of the same, but,
Marvel,
That's
You have... Go ahead.
it's more unacceptable now than it was back when Marvel Ultimate Alliance 2 was out, and even then, they were kind of pushing it.
Yeah, the big problem I have with Marvel Ultimate Alliance 2 was that they did Civil War, and Civil War is a bad story. The movie Civil War fixes that by not actually being about the Civil War comic arc hardly at all. It's still the same general idea of, like, the government wants more control of superheroes, but, like, they go about it in a much, much better way.
That's good. Finally figured it out. All we had to do to fix the storyline is not do the storyline. Fuck you, nerds.
I
We
know.
tricked you.
I mean, there are plenty of adaptations that are so much better by not actually adapting their source material.
Yeah.
10 Things I Hate About You is usually my go-to example, because it's like, how do we do the Taming of the Shrew? What if we don't do the Taming of the Shrew and instead do this story?
What if we just didn't? But yeah, I feel like a bad endgame happens when you don't really realize it's an endgame until you notice that they're just ticking off boxes for what's supposed to be an exciting climax.
Yeah.
Like, again, Ultimate Alliance, everything is going wrong off-screen, but it's going wrong. The game tells you so. The same thing actually happens in, spoilers for a recent game, Daemon Ex Machina. I don't quite think anybody cares about the storyline of that, but I at least sort of knew the end of the game was happening just because the game is sectioned off by rank, so once you hit A rank, it's reasonable to assume you're almost at the end, but it is just situation of, like, all the consortiums email you between missions going like, oh man, bad stuff's happening, oh no. Or it's like, oh, everybody's getting their ass kicked. You can't see it, but, like, it's happening. And then just every once in a while, one of the three consortiums will be like, alright, we're done, can't really do anything else. Good luck, player character.
It's so weird that both of your examples have been video games, because those tend to be a bit better about signposting when the endgame starts.
Oh yeah.
Just because they're games.
And I do have some good examples. I'm
trying to think of more bad examples, because I feel like the good examples aren't very interesting that I've come up with.
Right, so I have a good classic example, which is Sonic 3 and Knuckles. Sonic 3 does a really good job of using its, layouts, its backgrounds to show where you are on Angel Island and sort of what's going on, which is important once you get to Lava Reef because you start seeing the Death Egg in the background. And then eventually you see it very close to the background, it reactivates, and you spend the next few levels, basically following it as it goes up to space until you finally get to it. Sonic 3 has some really good endgame pacing, because just everything that happens after the Hidden Palace is just so cool. Now, normally, I am a proponent for using words and stories. I think dialogue is pretty rad. But you know what? Sonic 3 does a really good job of, having a wordless story. It conveys it very well.
Mm-hmm.
That being said, I still like dialogue in Sonic games. I don't give a shit. Why does Sonic have so many friends? I mean, look, not all the characters are, like, amazing, but, you want some good characters. Granted, Sega hasn't been great at utilizing them, but hey, look at the fucking Tyson shorts for Sonic Mania and Team Sonic Racing.
Team Sonic Racing is a cartoon that I would fucking kill for.
God. Like, Sonic Mania was
I just want wacky races with good.
Yeah, like, the Sonic Mania one is good because, like, Mighty and Ray got a personality.
It's fucked up, right?
I know. But anyway, a little off track here. My other example is Mario & Luigi Superstar Saga, which I think has a particularly good endgame and a very unusual story. I call it unusual because, like, the heroes kind of win a lot more than you might be used to in a story. Like,
yeah.
There just comes a point pretty much at Hoo Hoo University where you just start gaining ground against Cacletta, and she does, sometimes she pulls back and is in control for a bit, but, like, by the end of the game, she doesn't even have the artifact she's been looking for the entire thing. Usually, the end of the game is where the main villain gets the thing they've been wanting and they use it. But here it's like, no, Cackletta can't get the Bean Star, so she just went back and got Bowser's Castle, so she's going to blow up the Bean Kingdom. You've gotten the villain to the point where they're saying, fuck it, I'm done here.
Yeah, it's so weird. Most video games, especially most RPGs, will have you win, like, small, almost meaningless victories just so you don't get too depressed and stop playing.
Mm-hmm.
It's weird that, like, yeah, you're exactly right. You pull one over on Cackletta really early on in the game, comparatively speaking.
Kill her at the halfway point.
Yeah, but even then, like, she never gets Peach's voice. You trick her before the game even starts.
That rules. It's so good.
It's very hard to pull off a you were never actually a threat villain and make it seem cool, but I think that game did it.
God, like, I like the other Mario and Luigi games. They're good, but none of them quite have as good a story because it's just so irregular, but it does it in a way that just works.
Yeah, it's not like a tour de force of writing, but it's very charming and fun.
Yep.
Speaking of tour de force of writing, I'm going to cheat because we're talking about story pacing, so of course one of my good examples is going to be Avatar: The Last Airbender.
Oh, yeah.
God, that show in general is just so good at, like, transitioning the different parts of a story. I think the end game, you could argue it's either Season 3 as a whole or after the Day of the Black Sun.
Mm-hmm.
I think of an end game as everything that happens after the last important thing to happen. Or I think of it as there is one important thing that sets up the rest of the show. And to me, that was the failed invasion during the Day of the Black Sun.
Yeah, that definitely works.
It's the last 10 episodes are different enough from the first 10 episodes of the third season that I think they're the end game rather than the season as a whole.
Yeah, I would almost say that, like, Season 3 as a whole sort of works because it's a huge change, but then there's definitely Day of the Black Sun as the secondary one.
The huge change within the huge change. But speaking of endgames, it just sort of happened. I'm gonna say Dirty Pair, even though that didn't have an endgame. The original TV show did end with, I think, 2-part episode of them having to rescue the CEO from their own headquarters.
Yeah, that episode.
So that was very much just like, alright, last episode, here we go, time to do a big thing.
Yeah, and then, like, the end for a few moments is like, oh no, is Yuri dead? But no.
And then they're like, the actual ending scene I think is good. I really appreciate those types of endings rather than definitive, like, I don't know. I prefer endings that aren't endings sometimes.
Yeah,
I like the idea that they're still screwing around having adventures rather than them having any sort of finality to their story.
Yeah, it definitely works for Dirty Pair. In general, it's always good to sort of have continuity, I think. Because usually, you can have the story and all of its importance there, but most of the time, I do kind of appreciate when things go on after the storyline.
Yeah.
Like, I can't really think of any time I wouldn't appreciate an epilogue of some sort on something.
Mm-hmm.
I think, God, one of my only examples off the top of my head is Final Fantasy VII. I like that ending. I like it being ambiguous. Fuck you, Square Enix.
God, I like that because the reason that they keep going back is because they never intended for it to be ambiguous, and they were mad at people seeing it as ambiguous.
I hate it when people accidentally write something really good, and then hate that they wrote something good, and try to walk it back. Ugh.
I mean, I can appreciate, like, I don't want people shoving grimdark into my story that wasn't supposed to have a grimdark ending. You fuck off, get out of here. But I don't think that Final Fantasy VII was a good way of going about it.
Yeah, no, plus, like, I think it was really fitting for the storyline they did, which was all about fucking environmental shit.
Yeah.
Turns out the moral of, we might have fucked up everything too much, it might be too late, but we're gonna try to save everything anyway. Honestly, pretty good one. I like the ambiguity of it. I like that they didn't just say, oh yeah, by the way, Cloud fights Sephiroth again, and then Geostigma disappears, woo, or whatever.
See, I'm going to give one more example that looks like an example of just Alright, so last story time to do a thing, but is actually pretty well foreshadowed. Cowboy Bebop.
Oh, yeah.
That really does seem on its surface to be like, okay, we end on a two-part story where something dramatic happens. But in the episodes leading up to it, like, you see Spike and Jet drift away from everyone else.
Yep.
And each other to an extent.
Yep. Yeah, that's...
Cowboy Bebop is a really, really good example of a thematic storyline over a events plot.
It's just that, Spike's theme is an actual storyline that happens sometimes, but even then, it's still kind of mysterious.
I understand that, like, you don't want to look into it too much because you might kill it. Like, you can dissect the frog, but in the process you kill it. But I do wish people would go more into that instead of just saying, like, the point is to not know. Like, the point is to come to your own conclusions. Tell me your own conclusions, damn you.
I have, and it makes you sad.
And I've mentioned before there is at least one person who thinks that Cowboy Bebop is mostly filler, and if I ever meet this person, I will smack them. I've heard people say that, like, something that sets apart video games is that you can be bad at video game, but you can't be bad at watching a TV show or reading. You can absolutely be bad at that.
Oh my god, you can be terrible. You can just be the worst.
Link to an example of this in the description. Little known channel called CinemaSins. Awful at watching videos.
Oh god, yeah.
Man, there's so much... I might cut this tangent out, but there are a lot of people that, like, I wish I could just run into on the street in real life because I would just be really rude and leave and never have to deal with them again, and CinemaSins is one of them. Just like, oh, you're that guy who's too dumb to watch movies, right? And then just leave and never talk to him again.
Yeah.
I mean, it sucks to have people be rude to you on the street, but, like, come on, I'm not being that rude. I'm just saying an objective fact and then leaving.
I mean, really. Dude doesn't exactly seem like a class act, so
he could stand to have a little more misery in his life. It's not going to kill him. Alright, I think that's enough talk about endgames. Let's move on to the episode proper.
Yeah, we could go on for longer probably, but anyway. Episode 47, What I Can Do Right Now. That's a title, I guess. I don't know, maybe it's just the literal translation, but...
It is kind of a weird title.
Anyway, we begin today in Hell, where Zamigo removes himself from Gosha's operating table. He says he feels great and compliments her on being the best Ganglar mad scientist. With this, Zamigo should get plenty of time with Lupin Red. But as he leaves, Gosh mentions to herself that she'd like a little more knife time. And we end on that ominous note.
But as he leaves, Gosh hands him a lollipop and says he's been such a good patient.
Ah. Well, that's nice. The lollipop is made of people.
The lollipop is suspiciously red-colored. Like, oh, is this cherry-flavored? Nope.
Back in the flesh dimension, Jur closes for the evening. Saki approaches the restaurant and mutters to himself that Umika wouldn't do that be being a phantom thief, and texts her, asking her if she'd like to go to lunch with him. Unlike the last time, Umika is a bit more receptive to it, and is willing to accept without an ulterior motive. Kairi teases her for it, of course, but once she's gone, Kairi notices that Tuma seems worried. Tuma just says that being roped in with the cops offers them nothing. Kairi suggests keeping an eye on her, but becomes concerned when Tuma looks like he's seriously considering it. Roll the intro.
I do love that joke. I'm like, geez, if you're so worried about her, just follow her.
Huh.
Wait, no!
The next day at the Pat Rangers HQ, Noelle walks into Kaichiro and Tsukasa acting very nonchalantly. Noelle asks if there's been any Ganglar activity, but it's been peaceful. Nothing has been going on at all. Noelle notices the lack of Sakia, but Sakia's got an alibi. They say Sakia has a day off, and Noelle immediately figures out that he's gone to see Umika. Noelle turns around and looks like he's pondering something, but unfortunately we don't get to see any of those Noelle imagination scenes that were so prevalent early on. I do kind of miss that joke.
Yeah.
I get that they didn't want to overdo it, but yeah, I wouldn't mind a little more of it. It's like Joseph's whole "you're about to say" thing. He doesn't do it as frequently as you'd think, and it's probably good. You don't want to overuse it, but could use it a little more. Just one more time, Joseph Joestar, say the thing.
It's going to be written on his tombstone.
We then cut to Sakya, where Umika arrives to meet him. While they talk, Kairi and Tuma sneakily stray in, not far behind them, in very inconspicuous outfits.
God, I love their disguises so much.
I mean, I know that it would be a terrible idea, both in terms of your own goals and just morally speaking, but maybe go to Zamigo. His disguises stand out less.
God, this is just proof positive that either Umika or Kogure is the actual designer of the Lupin disguises. Because despite not really disguising them all that much, they're so much better than these.
I feel like it's both of them. You know, Umika's got the actual fashion. Kogure did magic so that their masks actually disguise them magically.
Yeah.
Kairi does not appreciate being along for the ride. Umika and Sakya go to a restaurant and have a nice lunch, and Sakya asks if it's better than Tuma's cooking. She says, nah, probably because Tuma's an excellent cook, who Umika admires both because of their friendship and his culinary skill. Also because even if Tuma wasn't at a table across from theirs, he would find and choke out Sakya for diminishing his cooking. He could say it halfway across the earth and Tuma would find him.
I wish you could see Toma in the background, like, stand up and Kairi drags him back down to his chair.
Yeah, the most commentary you get from Tuma is he just coughs. But with the pleasantries out of the way, Sakya begins poking at Umika's background. Just as Sakya gets into asking about the mass disappearances, making the entire conversation uncomfortable, Kairi texts Umika to head to the bathroom. She escapes where she finds Kairi and Tuma. Both of them have figured out why Sakya is here, and Umika is worried that they may have slipped up at some point. Tuma figures that the cops aren't being direct, so they may not have concrete evidence yet. But they need to be careful and figure out how to throw the cops off again. For now, they want Umika to head back and continue as normal. But across town, Jim's alarm flashes, because it's Ganglar time. Kaitro, Tsukasa, and Noel head out, while Jim contacts Sakya. Back at the restaurant, Sakya gets the call. He hesitantly and apologetically leaves, and tells Umika to go straight back to Jure. He runs off, thinking about how he almost had a chance to have a real conversation with Umika. Kairi thinks the timing is good, and starts to go after Sakya. But Umika doesn't want to follow them, because the whole being dishonest towards Sakya thing is starting to get to her. Tuma says that's what being a Phantom Thief means, but that doesn't stop Umika from grappling with the issue. Thankfully, this is just a day of occurrences, making it so that people don't have to confront their main problems yet, as they hear the telltale whistling of Gangarland's premier ice bastard. Everyone moves to look out the window, and they see that Zamigo is indeed walking by. Kairi makes the executive decision to go after him instead, which even Umika is fine with. They decide Noel has the other Ganglar handled, so they run off to punch Zamigo. Elsewhere in town, some Potamen are the ones chasing crowds today. Good for them. However, they're easily gunned down once the cops arrive. But while they're easy fodder, Ghosh enters the picture, as bored but murderous as ever. The cops Kaisatsu change and charge in for a fight. Meanwhile, Zamigo is eating ice at some abandoned factory or something. Whatever set piece this is. The Lupin Rangers approach him, and Zamigo looks amused. The Lupins, though, aggro on him immediately. Red activates his super form, predicts Zamigo's movements, and blows a hole right through him with Magnum. And so, it looks like Zamigo's reign of terror finally comes to an end, now that he has a huge hole through his, wait, the hole closes. Zamigo laughs as the Lupins attempt to shoot him to shreds, but it seems their shots only go right through their target, forcing them to fall back. Even as they have him surrounded, they're clearly no longer on the offensive. It's there that Blue notices his ass safe, one he certainly didn't have before. The Lupin Rangers would have noticed an ass safe. Red figures it was gauche, and he's right. Zamigo tells them that apparently the collection piece he has now allows one to liquefy parts of their body. I do appreciate how little he seems to know or care about safe powers, having never had one before. Anyway, much like Lyman, stealing this treasure's pretty much a requirement if they hope to kill him. Back in Hell, DeGranio is watching the fight and notes that the piece Amigo has is one he gave to Gauche. Back at the Gauche fight, everything is going badly. Gauche's safe power really gives her an advantage over straightforward opponents, so, the Pat Rangers. X Kaito changes and uses his grappling hook to trip her up, but once he goes in for the steal, she switches her safe powers. Just before X can reach her, she impales him with a very real-looking sword arm that is not foam at all.
So I do love this collection piece, and I like that she just has a sword now. But Jesus Christ, this prop.
They clearly did not have the budget for practical effects. I guess this is just that awkward point where they're almost to the end where they'll need all of their budget, so, they can't use much of it.
They couldn't even give her a plastic sword.
No, they
It
just
had to
went
be
for
foam. Like, a plastic sword would have been fine. Most of the weapons in Sentai are plastic.
Yeah, and we're fine with those, but foam, that's a little too cheap. Gauche wastes no time after her surprise attack and slashes X down. She brags about her third treasure, which X recognizes as coup de gâteau. The rest of the Pat Rangers try to go in, but she tosses them all aside. We then get a cut to the Zamigo fight, which is also going poorly. In an attempt to rush the safe, Red grabs scissors from Blue and predicts Zamigo's next moves. Red uses his chest fans to disperse Zamigo's ice shots and starts flying for some reason. Like I said, not an episode where the practical effects are amazing.
Just, I can fly now, by the way.
Yeah, until he starts, floating without moving around too much, it doesn't look great. Anyway, Red pushes himself up off the ground with a burst of wind, but Zamigo foils his height advantage by blowing up the nearby building, sending Red crashing to the ground. Everyone is crushed by rubble, but of course, the now liquid Ganglar can just escape it with ease. Actually, I would like to note that, the effect usually looks pretty similar to Lyman's whole thing. You got the, green glowy bits around the damaged spots, except
Yeah.
I think this scene in particular does a good job of showing that it's not just repairing, it is actually missing.
Liquefying, yeah.
Yeah, it's more dangerous than just being able to heal off death somehow. Zamigo decides to leave just before Red blows the rubble away with his fans. As always, Umika is sad while the other two are angry, but all around nobody appreciates that Zamigo came along just to clown on them with his new power. So, with all that done, we return to the battle, still in progress. Gauche is still owning this fight, even with a different, non-predicty power. But to end it faster, she starts shooting buildings. This naturally gets the Pat Rangers to panic to make a good move. Ichigo just goes right up to her and grabs the hand firing a laser, so Gauche beats on him and tosses him aside. He detransforms and Igu runs over to block Gauche's next attack. But that's just a full-on laser to the chest, which puts Sakia down as well. Sangu runs in and tries to grapple with Gauche, but she's unsuccessful and is taken out of the fight. Seeing his friends hurt, X tries for one more charge, but is defeated as well. Noel looks around him at the destruction Gauche has wrought and realizes they won't be able to open the safe. Nonetheless, he's determined to protect his friends, and so while Gauche is wondering who her first victim will be, he runs in front of her and offers himself as a specimen. He reasons that she'd be far more interested in a subject like him than some human, which, is still news to the Pat Rangers. Noel apologizes that he didn't tell them his identity sooner. Gauche agrees to Noel's terms, and so Noel gives the cops his collection pieces. How nice of him to unequip himself before leaving the party. For once, a 100% inventory run is actually crucial. Noel thanks the group for caring for him as though he was a human. Kaitro swears they're not going to let Noel die, and the other two nod. But Gauche ties Noel down and throws in one final golem, which she calls Destra's last words. She stole it from him a week before he died, I'll bet.
Mm-hmm. Also, I do appreciate Noel saying, well, you did say you only protected me because you thought I was a human, and Keitro was like, that's not what we meant, you fucking ass! You know that's not what we meant!
Yeah. I do like how, the scene's super short, but it does really emphasize that who Noel isn't really a problem to the Pat Rangers, even though they said they're protecting humanity. They just didn't know there were more people to protect other than just humans, so...
Yeah, I appreciate that worldview of, more people to protect. Cool.
We'll just have to amend that later. Humans plus whatever species Noel is. I don't think they've actually mentioned it.
Yeah, I don't think it has a name.
Anyway, Good Striker wanders in, so the Pat Rangers immediately launch their Kaiser. It's nighttime once we actually get to see the fight. This golem is slightly tougher than the rest, in part because he has Sonic's homing attack. Ichigo brings out Siren Striker, and Goody wonders why they have it, not Noel. But there's no time to explain that situation. They gotta form Siren Pat Kaiser. The golem tries another homing attack, but is stopped by a yo-yo. And once he's down, the Kaiser uses the Siren Strike, which is a bunch of lasers and a yo-yo, blowing Destra's last golem to smithereens. With the battle finished, Good Striker wonders where Noel is, and the Pat Rangers can only apologize. Back in hell, Gauche throws Noel before Degranio. Degranio is amused that X is here, and Noel mutters something about status gold physical protection, which I guess means that much like King Hippo from Punch-Out, he has stuff protecting his stomach. Anyway, end of episode.
So a lot happened, huh?
Alright, so I don't think we can really talk about a particular Ganglar because they're all up and running.
You did it now. Problem. You made the mistake I made, but in reverse. Now we're even.
Gengars, and I call Genglars, Gengars.
You say Gengar, and I say Ganglar. So yeah, there isn't really a Ganglar to talk about. Because every Ganglar we could talk about is going to probably come up again later, so...
Just imagine if Zamigo's like, no, actually, I'm done.
Zamigo says, well, see you in Re, soldier. Not coming back for this one.
Yeah, honestly, I just wanted to clown on the Lupin Rangers. Like I said, I'm not interested in the whole succession thing. You guys have fun, I'm out of here. Fuck your emotional climax. But yeah, I do appreciate that Zamigo was just there, A, to keep the Lupin Rangers distracted, but B, to show that he is now super powerful for the endgame.
Mm-hmm.
And meanwhile, Gauche hasn't had any notable improvements that we really know of. She just reveals that she has another surprise. Other than that, she's just, weirdly strong. For how little of a shit she gives.
Yeah, I really appreciate how well this... how good of a job this does at setting up the rest of the show.
Mm-hmm.
And, kidnapping a character, it's something that can be done, early and can be resolved before the end of the episode and it kind of falls flat. Kidnapping a character at the end of an episode is always really stressful.
Oh, yeah. Ain't nothing you can do about that until the next one, and who knows what could happen to them then.
Yeah, who knows what could happen in the intervening week.
You know, if somebody gets kidnapped at the beginning, you'll probably at least know their fate by the end. Because even if they're gonna get killed, you'll know.
It's also just think of this from the Lupin Ranger's perspective. Like, here you should have this because you never know when you might need to use it. In the very next episode, he gets fucking kidnapped.
Yep.
We need to trust you to be on your own more.
Well, now he is on his own. Too much, one might say.
And these are the decisions he makes when on his own. There was one really quick thing that I wanted to talk about. You sort of breezed over a lot of what Umika and Sakia talked about, for a good reason, I will assume.
Mm-hmm.
But Umika does make a comment on dropping out, and Sakia says something of like that's really cool, and I couldn't imagine having that much faith in myself to drop out of high school. It's a good line. I like that line. But while we were watching it, I did make fun of it because this is a show aimed at children.
Uh-huh.
And it occurred to me, like, that line would fucking never make it to Power Rangers.
Oh, absolutely not.
And it's hard for me to explain, like, why I love Sentai so much, but I kind of tolerate Power Rangers. And I feel like that might be a good example of the difference in writing styles. Not necessarily quality, just styles.
Yeah.
Sentai is aware that it's primarily aimed at children, but they're not afraid to say certain things, and not just the typical things of, like, death. They're also not afraid to say, like, this character dropped out of high school, and that's okay.
Yep.
You could never say that in an American kids show.
No, you could not.
You couldn't even imply that.
No, you gotta shame them if they do anything off the beaten path.
Yeah. Anyways,
So
that one line
said.
just made me realize, like, oh, that's why I like so many Japanese things.
Though that being said, Saki is saying he couldn't drop out of high school is highly unrealistic, because as we know, he does want to be a YouTuber.
Well, that's the thing. You can't realistically drop out of high school to be a YouTuber. Unless you make it big while you're in high school.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, this episode is mostly setting things up.
Yeah.
And it's hard for us to really like be excited and lose our shit about this sort of thing because we could always just stop recording and watch the episode.
Yeah.
This is why Sex Archie records immediately after watching their episodes, I think, because they're still like riding the high.
Yeah. But I usually need time to sort of digest everything. This episode in general, though, like, even like thematically wise, it's very much set up east, so I don't have much to say about it other than what I already said. I think it's neat that the Pat Rangers don't care that Noel's not human. They just didn't know that they had to use slightly different language because they were dealing with a non-human person.
So yeah, the dropout thing was all I really wanted to talk about that we haven't already covered, I think.
Yeah, covered the Ganglars, clowning on everyone, got a lot of setup.
Any predictions? Is Noel gonna fucking die?
I mean, he did give away his equipment, but I feel like he's gonna survive.
Okay.
And I'm not just saying that because I saw X-Emperor in the preview.
He gave away his equipment.
I know. Somebody else could just be riding that. But I feel like he's gonna survive. In part because while he's been captured, there's definitely something else that's gonna be the huge focus of the next episode that I've kind of been excited about for a long time. It's the reveal episode, it seems.
Yep. I do want to just at least make the comment, we're about to watch Noel die for our sins.
Yep, T-posing. They got him up on the old T-pose torture, as I call it. And
Honey, I love you.
Did as well.
Honey, I love you, but every time you refer to crucifixion as T-posing, I just lose my mind a little bit.
I mean, what else is it?
It's crucifixion! It kind of predates T-posing by a couple millennia.
I think you mean by a couple of seconds, because let me tell you, when the Lord and Savior Jesus Christ was on there, he established the hell out of his dominance. Oh my god, I'm going to hell!
You're already... Look. I'm gonna isolate that clip and send it to my friend from high school who's a preacher now.
Oh no!
I'm also gonna go to hell. We'll be there together. Anyways. That does it for this episode. If you want to follow us on Twitter, you can follow us at LRVSPR. Fefner is at Fefner Masamune in hell. If you want to email us, you can email us at LupinRecap via PatReview@gmail.com. And we will see you in the next episode. Adieu.
Adieu.